Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are really excited to talk to ZSuite and Encore Bank about what they are doing at Q2. So with Q2, we have really moved our online banking product to more of a platform software that has been very purposely built to allow multiple software and modules to utilize our underlying functionality of the platform through APIs and SDKs, and really kind of have this like plug and play approach into our online banking platform. And ZSuite is a really great example of how they've done this, that they've built a solution that works for all of our Q2 customers within online banking, utilizing our SDK and all of our fundamental groundwork there. And they have an amazing success story with Encore Bank, who's joined us here today as well. And they're going to be talking to us today about what it was like building that solution inside of our platform and kind of what they can offer to our financial institutions, and along with the experience that Encore Bank has had. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nathan.
Excellent. Well, Vera, thank you very much. Excited about the partnership that we have with Q2 as well as that we have with Encore Bank. And I'm excited to share with those of you that are in attendance some of the things that we've done together, as well as to talk a little bit about the opportunity of what it is that ZSuite Tech could do. So before we get started, I did want to introduce my co-presenter here, Yobany, who is the SVP of Treasury Management Sales Officer and Western District Team Lead from Encore Bank. How's it going, Yobany?
It's going great.
Awesome. So though, obviously ZSuite Tech is a separate company than Q2, we still, I personally actually call Austin, Texas home, and Yobany is joining us from San Antonio, Texas.
That's right.
So to go ahead and get started, what I wanted to do first is talk a little bit about what it is that ZSuite Tech does, and then I'm going to hand it over to Yobany after that to be able to share what they have done at Encore Bank. So I always like to start off with a question of, hey, who needs some commercial deposits? It was funny because we actually started our company back in 2019. We spun out from a bank in the Northeastern area. And as you can imagine, being a company that helps to drive deposits in 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and 2022 was a little bit difficult. Obviously, there were some financial institutions that wanted to grow deposits, but as the economic situation has turned, as rates have been rising, we've seen all of the different pieces of news about how deposits are leaving the U.S. financial institution system and going to other places. And this has become an extremely topical conversation. So if you go from the very top level of what it is that ZSuite Tech does for financial institutions, it would be being able to drive deposits. Now, there's a lot of different ways to be able to drive deposits. A lot of different strategies that you can deploy, but again, we're just going to focus on where it is that we can help. So the main focus of our platform is that in the categories of deposit growth, we fit clearly into what is considered specialty deposits. And as you dive a little bit deeper into specialty deposits, the main area that we focus on is going to be commercial, escrow, and subaccounting. I joke around most of the time when I present, I say, no, not that escrow, because most of the time when we talk about escrow, even in the financial institution industry, a lot of people are thinking escrow on mortgages, right? Where you escrow for your property taxes or your insurance or whatnot. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here are commercial customers or commercial clients who have to use escrow or subaccounting on a day-to-day basis to run their business. And most of the times, the way that we talk about this, and this doesn't cover all of the use cases, but it definitely covers most of them, we oftentimes refer to these as three-party accounts. So first, you start with the financial institution as the first party. Second would be the company. This is going to be who the customer is or the client is of the financial institution themselves. However, the company is actually holding the money on and for and behalf of their customers or their clients. That's why these are three-party accounts. There's trillions of dollars in the U.S. financial system that are held in escrow accounts, trust accounts, FBO accounts, sub accounts, omnibus accounts, et cetera, that fall into this type of three-party account system. And however, even though there's this huge opportunity, very, very few financial institutions are actually doing it. And one of the reasons is because when you dive into the different industries themselves that use commercial escrow, there's a couple things that make it difficult to be able to support. So if you talk about landlords or title companies or real estate offices or funeral homes or 1031 exchanges, each of these have different rules depending on the geography as well as the industry on what they can do, how they can be treated, what are the specific use cases, etc. So the banks that have jumped in to power these types of accounts or to support these types of accounts, and like I said, there's very few financial institutions in the US that do this, they find that it's a very inefficient process and extremely costly. So much so that we've even seen some of the largest banks in the United States who dabbled their toes in it pull back out because of the operational inefficiencies. And in the end, that's what we do. We've built a platform to be able to help manage these commercial escrow accounts in a much more efficient fashion that is more efficient not only for the financial institution that's offering these, but also more efficient for the commercial customers themselves. Now, since this is oftentimes a very new space for most financial institutions that we're talking to, what we wanted to do in this webinar is actually just share a couple different stories on different industries, specific clients, on how they are using commercial escrow or sub-accounting to be able to run their day-to-day operations. This is not exhaustive, but rather as I share these stories, what I hope it does is it helps to drive your creative juices on what types of commercial customers or commercial clients that are out there that you work with that might be using escrow and sub-accounting that you might be able to offer something to help you grow deposits. So to get started with the story, and by the way, I spent a lot of time making sure I could find that really cool PowerPoint presentation transition there where it looked like a storybook. I want to talk briefly about 1031 exchanges. And I say briefly because as Yobany talks a little bit about what Encore Bank is doing, he'll talk greater on this particular category. Some of you might be familiar with 1031 exchanges. This is something that was created based off of a specific tax code. In the beginning, they were called like-kind exchanges because if you sold a thing and then you bought a thing that was very similar, you could actually take any profits that were recouped from the sell of that and reinvest it to buy the new thing without paying any taxes. A little while ago, it moved from just overall like-kind exchanges to just be for real estate transactions. So currently 1031 exchanges are specifically for real estate transactions. Could be anything from a single family home all the way up to a large manufacturing site from a Fortune 10 company. Right. So it can really kind of cover the bases. But again, the whole idea here is if I sell something, any of the gains that I get from the sell, if I put it in a 1031 exchange, I will not have to pay taxes on those as long as I reinvest it in a like-kind property. Now, what does this have to do with escrow and sub-accounting? Well, there's a couple things. First, all of these transactions are done by a qualified intermediary or an accommodator. So there's two ways that a financial institution can participate in this. First, they could have a subsidiary where they actually run as a qualified intermediary. Therefore, not only are you going to get the deposits to hold them in escrow, but you also can get into the fee income or whatever else might be happening to actually execute on these exchanges. So that's one way. Another way that you could actually do this is to actually find the qualified intermediaries or accommodators that are currently offering these and be their financial institution. The nice thing about these is overall, the average 1031 exchange is about $500,000 across the United States. But as you can imagine, if you have a transaction like a Ford facility where they're selling an old manufacturing facility and buying a new one or building a new one, these could be extremely large deposits here. A lot of interesting things that happen within these 1031 exchanges. Most of the time they are interest bearing. Most of the time, both parties, both the person doing the exchange as well as the accommodator is getting a portion of that interest. There are certain rules they have to follow, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to share any of the success stories on this because, like I said, I know Yobany is going to cover that a little bit later. So let's move to the second story, second use case, property managers. Property managers and landlords have a lot of very interesting use cases from a banking perspective, from large collection of money, payment volume and transactions to escrow accounts sitting in tenant security. Right? A lot of different use cases. Now, ZScrow, where does that play? It typically plays on those tenant security deposit accounts. What we can do is we can allow first and foremost that there's a register of the ownership of those escrow deposits with the financial institution to make sure that they are FDIC insured, et cetera. However, there's also very specific laws and regulations that vary based off of state by state or even city by city or county by county on what property managers can do or can't do with their tenant security deposit accounts. So we built within this platform a very easy way to not only manage these accounts to keep track of who they belong to, but in addition to that, help them comply with the different local laws on what they can or can't do with security deposits. For example, sometimes you need to send an account opening notification to let them know where the account's being deposited. Certain jurisdictions require that interest is generated on these security deposits and all or a portion of the interest goes to the tenant. In other instances, interest can't sit within the security deposit account until it closes. It actually needs to be dispersed on a frequent basis, right? So a lot of different use cases. The quick story that I want to share here is a financial institution that we were working with. There's a wonderful commercial banker. This was a bank that worked with, and her name's Michelle, and she'd been working on building out a relationship with Elias Akiki. Elias owned a business. It was an auto body shop. And Michelle had been working with him for about 5 years, trying to get the business from another financial institution to be able to bank the auto body shop. After a while, she was creating this relationship. She found out that he had actually been for years and years and years investing the profits from his auto body shop into purchasing rental properties. So much so that he actually had 20 rental properties, not units, properties, of which he had multiple units in each of those properties. So much that Elias was like, man, I feel like I'm running a property management company rather than running my auto body shop. So Michelle had some of the ZSuite products that were tailored specifically for property managers. We did a demo with her, with Elias, to be able to talk about what we did. And afterwards, he's like, oh man, okay, I'm in. Michelle, you've been around for a while and we've been talking, really excited about the bank. These tools really are going to be able to help me manage my property management part of the business much easier. I'm all in. Michelle's like, cool. So, you'll move over security deposits and start collecting rent he's like, no, I'm going to move everything, the auto body shop, property management stuff, all that stuff. We're like, oh, this is awesome. It's so great. He pulled out a checkbook. He's like, hey, is $100,000 okay to start with for an initial deposit? She's like, yeah, that'll be just fine. But my favorite part is when we walked out of the door, he said, hold on a second. I was planning on refinancing about half of my properties, and I was wondering if that's something that you could help with. Of course, Michelle had a big smile on her face. Of course we could. I made sure to follow up about a year later and say, hey, how's everything going with Elias? And she's like, oh, it's going great. We've actually refinanced more than half of his properties, and we still have all of his deposits, right? It's a great story on the growth within property management as a particular use case. Now let's jump over to nursing homes. Nursing homes are interest. There's actually a lot of use of custodial accounts or escrow accounts or trust accounts within this portion of the population because at some point they might not be able to manage their own money. So what ends up happening is the nursing home as an entity actually opens up accounts. Those accounts are clearly owned by the residents themselves, right? So it's still their money. It's not the nursing home's money, but the nursing home is acting as the agent to be able to use that money to be able to pay their different bills, et cetera, et cetera. So they need to keep track of that. They're all escrow accounts and how they are set up, and need to make sure to have very clear accountability on the ownership of the funds and how they're using, et cetera. So within that, we have one financial institution that is focused specifically on this particular target market, and they've grown their number of accounts within this nursing home area to 18,000 different sub accounts. Obviously, the balances vary across each one depending on what they're doing. They had created their own proprietary system to be able to support this. We're able to jump in and say, hey, look, I think we might be able to help with bringing in the ZEscrow platform to be able to help manage these in a much more streamlined fashion. They're very excited about that particular use case and saw all the efficiencies that we could garner, so much so that they knew that they could continue to grow this business in a way that was going to be much more operationally efficient to really drive down those efficiency ratios as they were building out these nursing home vertical. Next one, municipalities. Municipalities use escrow and subaccounts all over the place across multiple different organizations you can think of things like retainage accounts or surety bonds when they have contractors that they have a large contract with. They need to put a portion of money up. We see sub-accounting all the time. For example, a particular department gets approval to spend $1 million for a particular project. They want to set those funds aside so that they can have clear accountability in how those funds are being used. And so that they can have that accountability back to and the reporting back to who they report to. Within that, you can also see, cemetery plots. We've seen Environmental Protection Agency accounts, FEMA accounts, just a lot of different use cases, custodial accounts for minors, housing authorities, police seizures. I mean, there's so many different things that we've seen. But one of the most interesting stories that we ran into from a municipality perspective is we were talking to a municipality. Again, this is through one of our clients, one of the banks that we work with. And they said, okay, well, here's what's interesting with these escrow accounts. We're like, tell us more. They said, depending on the average balance, they get a different interest rate. And depending on the average balance, we either have to send out a quarterly statement or an annual statement. Right. And so this was a new thing that we didn't think existed, but we thought that it was interesting to be able to figure out how to get that done. So we were able to help out with the reporting aspect and the efficiency aspect. From this particular bank, got one of my favorite quotes, which is, with municipalities, their escrow deposits might make up only 10% of the deposits, but make up about 90% of the headache. And that headache is for both the financial institution as well as the municipality. So if you can help solve the 90% of the headache, not only will you get the 10% of the deposits, you'll actually get a better chance of getting all of the relationship deposits because you're able to help out in a big way. Last one that I want to talk to is in the health category. And I believe Yobany might touch on this a little bit, but I'll share a slightly different story. We're coming up with lots of different use cases within the health space. The one that I wanted to share today is on the benefits admin side. So there is a settlement claim that's paid out, and that money can only be used for medical expenses. Those typically are sent to a third-party administrator to be able to pay the medical bills, because if you give it to the individual, then the individual could use that money for whatever they want. So it goes to a third-party administrator. And there's a bunch of these out there. One of these sent out an RFP. Managing hundreds of millions of dollars in escrow deposits, has very specific specifications. But one of the most interesting specifications that they came up with is they wanted to be able to manage the whole thing headless, meaning they never wanted to sign on to the user interface. What's interesting with this is as an API-based system, we actually don't care how we get the instructions on what to do with the escrow deposits. It could be through the user interface. It could be through bulk actions via file uploads, or it could be through an API. And this particular company had their own software system. We ensured that all of the data that we needed was in that software system. We connected directly up to their API, and we've been able to help them fulfill. One of our banks with the ZSuite platform was able to help them fulfill those very, very specific requirements. So again, it's not an exhaustive list of different stories, but I hope that you can get this idea that these three-party accounts, or in some cases where you just have a pool of funds that need to be split up amongst others, are a very lucrative place to be able to drive deposits. And with the ZSuite platform, you're able to differentiate the offering that you provide, because it's going to be more efficient and going to be able to take a lot of the manual processes that are currently required to support these types of accounts away. And it's because of that we've seen great deposit growth. We just passed $500 million in deposits. As we work through the financial institutions that are currently in our queue, we actually expect to go over $1 billion of deposits being managed on the platform well before the end of the year. We have wonderful representation across multiple verticals. So we have close to 2,000 commercial customers that are using the platform currently across all of these verticals that are represented on this slide here. So what I'd like to do now is turn the time over to Yobany, where he can talk a little bit about how Encore Bank has been using the ZSuite platform, which they, of course, call it something else. But want to hand it over to Yobany.
Nathan, thank you very much. It's an honor to join, and I have great news for the participants Encore Bank did some more heavy lifting to onboard the Z Escrow solution ahead of their inclusion in the Innovation Studio. So the punchline is you guys can have this same solution up and running much quicker, is my understanding. So what I'm going to get to talk to today is 3 quick highlights to reinforce the message Nathan sent. 1031, I'll say a little bit, and that's really where I'm going to finish off. But this is where Encore Bank, which is a very fast growing privately held bank. We operate in 20 markets across 8 states. And this is the area that got my bankers, my relationship managers, most excited because they thought we could get the biggest wins and the quickest wins. And I got to say, so far, they've been right. So we are going to join the Federation of Exchange Accommodators, 1031.org, I believe is their website. And we are actively pursuing these intermediaries who are used to dealing with banks, high volume of accounts. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the benefits that they've won. But this has been an area of focus for us and an area of success. 2, on the property management side, I've had success, and our peers, my bankers in the market here in Central Texas, similar to the story Nathan mentioned, but even on a smaller end, a gentleman or a woman who has investment property on the side and loves the idea of having it segregated. Even if you're in a municipality or a state where the laws may not be as prescriptive or strong, it just is a great level of comfort to know those funds are segregated, easily accounted for. And so I have a client here in San Antonio. He's got 6 rental properties, single family homes. That's not his primary source of income, but he likes it. And so to be able to have his accountant log into what we call Encore Digital Escrow and manage that has been a great win and really a level of comfort for him. And then the third one, healthcare. This goes back to before I joined Encore. I was at another regional bank here, and one of my largest depositors was in what I'll call the alternative to insurance space in the medical industry. So rather than having Aetna, Cigna, et cetera, this was a cost sharing community for medical expenses. And so they were actively onboarding individuals and companies who wanted to provide as a benefit to their employees an alternative to traditional insurance. And at one point, they had 15,000 participants, some individually, some as part of companies. And I had done my hardest to work a process between my onboarding, my retail, my back office, getting them online. And I had, I think, a 20-page PowerPoint, Nathan, on the most efficient way to handle this. And we onboarded 300 plus accounts within a year. And it was probably my 8th largest treasury management fee generator, as well as a significant source of deposits. I was feeling like a champ. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm doing something more exciting at Encore. We hear about Z Escrow, and Nathan agrees to come on this call with me. And we have a much more efficient and elegant solution where, similar to the other healthcare industry he mentioned, we could talk about an API integration that cut out 19 of those 21 PowerPoint slides to make it very efficient for them. And so this is one, it's an elephant I'm hunting still. I've had some transition on the C-suite, but what it did is it got their attention. And I got to, funny enough, sell against the solution I put in place that I thought at the time was great because it was better and faster than some of their other banks at the time. But now to be able to have a solution, a tool in Z Escrow that was even more efficient, quicker, and less painful, I got to tee myself up for opportunity. So still chasing that one. On the next slide, you'll see, going back to 1031s, I was on the phone with one of my favorite recent customers, and I was asking her how the experience has been. We talked to her about 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. And one of our markets, the regional president is very good friends with the partner in this firm. It's a qualified intermediary. And she was talking about how she has things working just fine, but as a good relationship manager said, would you just be open to looking at the solution? We think it's the next best thing. She agreed to a demo. Our partners at ZSuite did a fantastic demo. Joe Filer led it, and we uncovered some opportunities for improvement. And her eyes were open to, although what she had in place was working okay, she thought there was an opportunity for this to be better. But she wasn't ready to make a move. So again, like any good community banker, we stay close. We'll let her know, hey, we're not here to push you into anything new just because. Stay in touch with us, let us know. And about a month ago, when we were all running around talking to our customers because of the SVB and Signature Bank and et cetera, She was concerned about her bank and decided on a weekend, from Friday to Monday, I'm ready to make a move and I want to do this now. So we had teed up the opportunity with our partner ZSuite. She was open to the idea, but not ready. And then factors outside of our control made it where now's the time to do it. And as a partner, ZSuite was fantastic, helping us onboard 27 accounts, over 10 million in deposits. It was a quick win. And it's in the 1031 space. And I asked her, Bridget, what have you liked about this system? Obviously, this was a little bit of a rush. And she couldn't stop saying good things. She said, I love the user interface, the navigation, as I mentioned here in her quote. Once I got used to the system, it's just very natural. I think she said she even liked it better than my online banking platform, which I didn't take personally. It's a compliment to ZSuite. She talked about wires. So one of the neat enhancements, and I'll reiterate that as a compliment to ZSuite, they're not resting on their laurels. They're finding new ways to enhance the solution. And when we first talked to this client, I was telling her, you'll manage all the sub-accounts and digital sub-accounts in this solution. You'll be able to pull statements. Eventually, you'll be able to show the end user, the owner of the funds, some limited access. But when you need to close out the account and do a wire, log back into your bankencore.com and get it done. Well, good news is there was an enhancement that they released, ZSuite. We're natively in the Escrow platform. She can, in the meantime, and at closing, wire out funds. So it'll capture the wiring instructions. And any number of clicks that we can save our customer, we know that makes an impact. And so that was something that she's really enjoyed recently, because particularly in the 1031 space, these are not accounts that are going to be open for 6 months, 9 months. They're going to churn quite a bit. And occasionally she'll have a large amount of money that then goes to be invested in multiple properties. So that was a nice convenience for her. And then the things that I get to hopefully take credit for is the customer service partnered with ZSuite. So what this tool will give you is a very efficient online way to deliver a solution to your clients who need to help with the headache of managing all these accounts manually. But it keeps you in control of the driver's seat on the relationship, delivering the experience that you want to for your financial institutions in your market. And I think that combination, the right tool in the right hands, makes a great impression on the customer. So I can't say enough good things about ZSuite. Again, I think you guys can get the solution a lot easier than even we did, because now it's in the Q2 Innovation Studio, which we're in the midst of launching Q2 for our bank, which is exciting. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and really appreciate the partnership with ZSuite.
Thank you so much, Yobany. We do have the chat open. If there are questions that anyone wants to ask Yobany as we're getting on, I see that there were a couple people that said that some of the sound wasn't working for them. We will make sure to record and email out, as Adam just mentioned. So apologize for those technical difficulties for those of you that weren't able to get on. As we are looking at possibly some questions, thought we would wrap up with a demo of the system itself. We won't go too deep into it, but just want to give you all an idea of the integration and what it comes. So Mark was asking, is this available in the Q2 marketplace? So this is part of the Q2 Accelerator program. So it is available through that. We do have some integrations through their SDK. See, Ruben is perhaps typing a question as well. So before I go ahead and jump over to the demo, I'll see what that question might be. When we first jumped onto the Q2 platform, we started with a single sign-on, and since then have continued to add additional upgrades in regards to the integration that we can do via the Q2 Innovation Studio. How has the property management client responded to this type of setup? Yobany, I'll let you go ahead and answer that one specifically for Encore, and then I can share any additional color kind of outside of your experience.
Yeah, and that pie chart you showed, and I encourage the financial institutions on this call, although we highlighted 3 or 4 industries, every one of those is promising. And the property management one at the origin of our relationship was the most exciting. We do a lot, as probably you guys do in commercial banking, community banking, investment real estate. So we went hard after that. What I found at the beginning is some of the larger developers and property management firms have some software that they use that they like. names like Appfolio, Yardi, and others. And so at first I stumbled a little saying, well, if you like that, then maybe this isn't a fit. But what helped me is having partners at ZSuite that could say that might do a few things really well for you, but ZSuite and Escrow might solve a couple other problems. So it's not an either or proposition. So what Encore has had success with mostly, and again, there's a lot more potential we haven't tapped into, is a little bit on the smaller end, someone that's not using one of those big platforms. But I will encourage you, and this, or Nathan, I hope you can jump into, is just because you hear, oh, we use a system, don't let that be a red light.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest use cases from a property management perspective are on that tenant security deposit side. And as Yobany mentioned, typically property managers at 50 units or more have invested in some sort of enterprise property management system. Like you might have heard of Yardi or Appfolio or RealPage. There's a bunch of them. And so that system itself can help to kind of keep a ledger of, who's paid a security deposit and, keep track of it from that perspective, right? But that's about as far as it goes. So getting that ledger back to the financial institution that's sitting on their escrow account, if they're even having the deposits in an escrow account. Honestly, I was talking to some property managers the other day where they take the security deposits and they put it in their operating account, which definitely isn't a good idea, right? But hopefully they're putting it in an escrow account. If not, definitely encourage that they do that. But then they have all the deposits pooled. So one of the things that we've been hearing quite a bit about is the importance of having that ledger at the bank, and you could do this through the ZEscrow platform, with the ownership of those funds. So from an FDIC insurance perspective, they're covered from a sub-account perspective, right? So that has been extremely helpful in providing that. But again, just because they have a Yardi or an Appfolio doesn't mean that they won't use the platform. Now, some of you are in states or in jurisdiction where there are very specific rules on interest has to be calculated and notifications need to be sent out and those types of things. And it's at a place like Yardi or RealPage or whatnot. They don't do that aspect of the management of a tenant security deposit account, but those are things that we can automate within the platform itself. So when there are specific rules in specific states or whatnot, then that increases the value that you can provide by offering the ZEscrow platform in that category. All right, so Mark just said in his experience at past banks, we only use escrow for property management clients, not this platform. Can you highlight high-level overview on how to establish new sub-accounts and closing out? Yeah, let's go ahead and go to that's a great segue for me to go ahead and jump over to. Let me go to here. All right, so first and foremost, the Q2 client would log into the Q2 Online Banking, and then depending on what you've decided to call the platform, on the navigation tab, there would be a button, like as Yobany mentioned, EDE is what they call theirs, Encore Digital Escrow. They could click on that, and then it would come directly into their ZEscrow instance for them. This is a law firm that's using this particular platform. Our demo bank that we use is Focus Federal Bank. So John Smith and Sons Law Group. Multiple users can have access to this. This is defined by the Q2 user groups that you have set up. But from here, they could see all the different balances, the transactions going in and out. They can pull down any of the documents, which are typically going to be the statements that are associated with all their accounts. They're able to pull down reports, download into CSV for different date ranges, et cetera. Here is where they can actually manage their sub-accounts themselves. So you'll see we have a whole bunch of different folders here. We've created an extremely flexible foldering system where they could add any folders that they want and name them depending on how it is that they want to manage their escrow account. So in this case, in the law group, maybe they act as a qualified intermediary. Maybe they have their custodial trust accounts here. Sometimes they'll have some escrow accounts where they're holding money for specific estates that they need to be held for a certain period before certain transactions happen. We'll also have maybe real estate transactions. Maybe they're using this as a subledger to manage their different retainers, but they have these different folders to manage their different sub-accounts or escrow accounts in the way that makes the most sense for them. So they're able to drill down to any of those accounts and see it from that perspective. Now, if they wanted to not just view the information and pull this information or pull statements, they can also go ahead and take actions like creating new sub-accounts. So let's say maybe they have an internal ID that they want to pull into within their LawTech software. Let's say this will be a custodial trust account for Jill Smith. So they can name that account whatever they want so that it's easy for them to look up or tie to other systems. In this case, Jill Smith is an individual who's the beneficiary. In other cases, some escrow accounts will have no beneficiary or will have a business as a beneficiary. With this custodial trust account, that means a portion of the interest is going to be going to the individual themselves. So we need to know whether they're a U.S. citizen or not, and then we want to know what folder to drop it into. So once we get that information, we know we need to get a W-9 because there's interest involved here. So we can either email the W-9 to the beneficiary. We use DocuSign for that, where it will be automatically generated through DocuSign. They'll get an email from DocuSign to fill out the W-9. Once they fill it out and sign it, then all of the data will automatically port back to this platform along with the PDF. However, if you do have your that commercial customer that doesn't really want to fill out W-9 or whatnot through electronic means, or maybe you have a process where the law firm collects it at the time that they get an agreement put together, they can always manually upload it. So they would take the information from the W-9 that they have received in another means. They'd fill out this information. The next screen is they can actually upload that W-9. Or if they don't have it right now, we can finish it later. We're now looking at the sub-account view. Here from the sub-account view, it's in pending status because we haven't gotten the W-9. So this is where you complete that. Once it is inactive, then all the other activities that you can do with the sub-account will be activated. So you can transfer funds in and out of the account. Here, you can actually close the sub-account. Right here, you have the ability to upload specific documents. So in the case of like a custodial trust account, if there's certain criteria that need to be met before the account's closed and they have a document or a contract that they want to upload, they could do that here. For an exchange agreement, for a 1031, they could put it here. For a tenant security deposit account, it could be an itemized deduction form if they keep a portion of it, right? A lot of different use cases of why you might want to do that. You can edit the beneficiary information there. You could do all this information from the platform itself. From there, that kind of takes you through that whole life cycle of opening, closing, managing these sub-accounts in of themselves. They can 100% self-serve. And as we talk about self-serve, as I mentioned before, they can use the user experience like what I just went through the UI, or they could do bulk data actions if necessary. The biggest use case for that we often run across is if you win a client and they're moving their sub-accounts from one bank to another bank, and let's say they have 100, 200, maybe even 1,000, you better believe they don't want to come in and click this new sub-account button 1,000 different times. So instead, what they can do is, we work with them through your financial institution to be able to get kind of the data in an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file. We can then use that to be able to do bulk actions and open them all up at once. Our record to date is 16,000 in one night. But whether it's 16,000 or it's like 50, it's a great way to save time for your commercial clients that you're working with. And then the last piece is if they do have a software system with APIs available, that's the other way that we can get data to be able to manage all of these actions. And then if we come over, and I'm going to go back to the bank's view of the platform, the way that we're able to support all these different use cases, Yobany talked about 1031 exchanges. We talked a lot about property managers. We talked about a couple different use cases in the healthcare industry. We've talked about municipalities, et cetera. All these are different. The way that we're able to manage all of those is on the bank's side, we're able to create different templates to manage the rules on how the account should be set up. Is it interest bearing? Is it not interest bearing? If it is interest bearing, who gets the interest? Is it the beneficiary? Is it the organization that's opening up the escrow accounts? Is it a third party, like in the case of like IOLTA or IOTA accounts? Is it split between what's the split? Are there notifications that need to be sent out? Are there statements that need to go to the beneficiary? All those things we can build into the templates, then apply those templates to a whole swath of clients. a specific client, or perhaps even an individual sub-account. So within one instance, you can actually have multiple different templates. So there's a quick review or run through of the platform itself, just for a brief demo. Obviously, anyone that's interested in learning more, happy to get on the phone and do a more specific demo for the use cases that come out. So I think that we're at a good spot where we can go ahead and wrap up. I do see someone else was typing a little bit, so I'll tap dance a little bit and ask Yobany what he's going to be doing over the weekend.
I'll be celebrating Fiesta down here in San Antonio. If you ever make it to Texas during this time, come down to San Antonio. We'll show you a good time.
Excellent. Not just for Fiesta, right? Anytime, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Excellent. Mark had a quick question about, does ZSuite work directly with bank clients to onboard? The question is absolutely. Actually, I should ask Yobany. Hey, Yobany, do we help y'all work directly with your clients to onboard?
5-star, A+. The hand holding is exceptional. Can't complain at all. It's great.
Yeah. We've learned very, very early on that we eat, breathe, and live escrow, trust, custodial sub-accounts day in and day out. And we found out that bankers usually don't do that, or the commercial relationship managers at credit unions. For some reason, evidently, y'all do more than just escrow and sub-accounts. I don't know why that's the case. But the reason I bring that up is we just assume we're going to be an extension of your team for anywhere in the client journey. So whether it is a new prospect and you want to do a demo, we'll be right there with you to do those demos through, digital means, of course. We are happy to work with folks. If it's a bulk upload, we're right there to be able to work through those bulk uploads. If there is a time to where they want to do an API connection and you need to talk about dev specs and those types of things, we're right there with you. So we just assume we're an extension of your team in all different cases. And Mark, thank you for that. We'll make sure to follow up. We appreciate it. Well, Yobany, thank you so much for your time in joining us, and to Q2, Ibir and team, thank you so much for letting us share a little bit about what we do. And as it would be remiss of me not to say how excited we are about working with the Q2 Innovation Studio. Being a part of that platform really has just been a great way to make working with the financial institutions that need commercial escrow and sub-accounting in a much, much more streamlined fashion. And I know that a lot of my peers who are running, software companies that sell into banks have appreciated it as well. So all the efforts that you're doing to drive innovation in the industry has been excellent. And so we love the partnership there. So with that, that's it, folks. Thank you so much for your time. I know that there will be some follow-up that will be sent out for those of you that attended. And I hope you have a wonderful day.